Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the M3 Melody Market Update. My name is Melody Wright, and I do this show to give you information you're not really hearing anywhere else and context for what's going on in the housing market. And many of you used to watch this show to get kind of weekly updates on inventory, but as I feel it's becoming clearer and clearer that the inventory myth is being debunked. I'm focusing more now on bringing knowledge experts that can tell you things that you probably don't have any idea about. So I'm excited today to introduce you to Jon Brooks. He is from the Florida area, and he has a lot to tell us about what he's seeing in that market. I think many of you understand that, Florida, I started sounding the alarm on Florida in 2023, standing on the top of tables and no one would listen just because of what I had seen. And so, as well as Texas and others. And as we've now seen, that trouble is starting to show itself. So without further ado, Jon, why don't you just tell us all about yourself, what you do, and how you got here today?
Yeah, well, I got here today because of YouTube. I have a Think Big Question Everything YouTube channel, and that connected us. So they're very grateful to be on the podcast and to get to spend some time with you and learning from you. But yeah, so my name's Jon Brooks. I'm in Jacksonville, Florida, originally from Washington, D.C. So I've kind of seen the culture shock from the North and the South and how people think differently about things, which is really valuable. But went to Virginia Tech on finance and real estate, was first in my class there. And went and worked on Wall Street, did a Goldman Sachs internship, ended up at Deutsche Bank, Big Four, that type of stuff. And I was a real estate investment banker, and I was called a financial engineering analyst. So I was responsible for funding American Homes for Rent, Invitation Homes, Progress Homes, First Key, and seeing all these single family rental aggregators in 2014, 2015, and giving them the loans, underwriting them, putting them together. At a certain point in time, I thought I could do better selling real estate, earning more income. So I became a realtor. I became the number one realtor in Jacksonville for 3 years. Got my wife into the business. We started buying flips, doing fix and flips, buying from foreclosure auction. And in 2020, we started our own real estate brokerage because we thought we could do that better as well. And so it exploded. We're very blessed. We've had like 70 people line up the door our first year. Then it was 150. Then it was, we're up to like 270, and headcount's growing 30%, already this year in a down year. And so we're very blessed. Along the way, we started lending to agents to do fix and flips. We have a title company, mortgage branch. So my point is, we see what other people don't see, which is the state of the consumer, because I have access to their financials through the mortgage branch that I'm able to see occasionally. And then we also see, what's going on the ground with open houses. Like, are there buyers showing up? What are the offers we're getting on these listings? Or what are we seeing with migration, right? Because we have the overall big numbers that come out from the large data sources. I can tell you that data sucks. It's very behind. It seems like I'm living in an alternate reality.
Yes.
And the people who, I think buyers intuitively understand what's going on regardless of the BS data that's fed to them on media news sources. And that's why I started a channel, right? And that's why I was like, 90 days ago, I was like, I'm seeing stuff change really quickly. And I've been bullish, Melody, from 2014 when I moved to Jacksonville all the way up to 2022. I sold all my rentals in 22 and 23. And I'm very happy that I did. I saw the writing on the wall when in March 2022, the Fed started raising interest rates, just typical housing, interest rates go up, asset prices come down, obviously. And if it goes up 4%, and the sensitivity to price is about 40% on, 4% increase in rates, we should see eventually over time prices correct. And we're already starting to see the correction. I believe Jacksonville's already in a correction. I know people are saying prices are still going up year over year. I don't know where they're talking about, but it's definitely not Jacksonville. It's not Orlando. It's not any of the areas that our agents are operating in. We're getting really low offers. The builders are offering massive incentives, and we're seeing a massive amount of creative financing deals come through. And the buyers who are left remaining are like FHA buyers who are scraping the bottom of the barrel, or VA buyers who don't know any better because they're relocating from out of area. And I just started reading the book Swamp Peddlers, and it's like, they called it the sucker bus, where they bring people in from outside to try to buy these properties in the swamp and then trick them into buying. I feel like that's no different now than what's happening on the ground with new construction, where they're built on the outskirts of the city. There's no jobs.
Right.
There's nowhere to work.
Right.
The salaries don't support what they're selling it to you for. And if they buy down the rate, to 3%, you are stuck in that house for 30 years. Otherwise, you're going to be taking an extreme loss on it because you'll lose access to that rate buy down. So, I think things are changing on the ground much more rapidly than what the news will let you believe. And I think it's just a matter of time until everybody kind of catches up to, people call me, doomsday John or whatever. It's like,
Welcome to the club, John.
I'm not
Welcome
that.
to the club.
I have eyes. I can drive around
Right.
my city and see that there's an apartment complex brand new that's 50% occupied. It's already been up for 2 years, and they're building 3 more right behind it.
Right.
And there's
Right.
there's people dancing on the street, flipping a sign saying 3 months free rent, 4 months free rent. I mean, like, how obvious does it need to be that we're obviously in a correction? And I even talked to a developer this morning, one of the largest in Jacksonville. He doesn't see it at all. He totally disagrees. He's like, population growth is great, prices are sustaining. And I'm like, you don't even, what world do you live in? I think there is just this blind bias of people who are in the industry who just don't want to see it because it would mean they would be losing.
100%. So, John, let me tell you, first of all, I just love the title of your job at Deutsche Bank. What was it? Financial engineering?
Financial engineering analyst. Yes. So I would do the DCF waterfalls for the tranches, and then we'd package them with the rating agencies, which was basically just a pay for play, in my opinion. You just pay them to tranche them however you want.
100%.
And then they sell it.
It was last time. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. There's no difference from what happened last time. It's the exact same game.
And that's, that's what's so, that's what's so shocking, I think, especially to those who are, navigated that crisis, then thought they spent a good chunk of their career trying to make sure this never happened again. I could see what was going on with the builders. I could see what was going on with demographics. I could see what was going on with short-term rental and long-term rental, all of this. But for probably a little while, I thought mortgage would be fine because I believed all the credit quality gospel singing. And I mean, that the whole industry had done and I had done. And then, but I should have taken my own lived experience of being at these non-banks and them not really caring that much. And then you saw, the automated underwriting systems really take charge. And then I saw it in the servicing books, and that's where you always see it first. And so anyway, I just thought that's, I'm going to write a novel someday, John, and the main character is going to be a financial engineering analyst.
I have plenty of stories to tell you. I mean, they're still unwinding. A lot of these banks are still unwinding the double pledged collateral from 2008.
100%. I mean, when you said Deutsche the first time that you and I talked, I was like, let me tell you, I've been, dealing with that paper for so long. I can't even, and it's a lot. Like when you go to these specialty servicers, like where I worked, it's a lot of that paper. And, ownership has changed, but it's a lot of DB stuff. So anyway, I think that is, I think you're absolutely right. I think it is very difficult for people to see what's going on. And I've been bemused is one way to say it, or just confused. Like when you see some of these housing analysts that just cannot see the writing on the wall, but it's because they believe mainstream media. They believe the people and the builders specifically, John, let me tell you, during the last crisis, they were the last ones. They were the last ones to believe what was happening. They would keep telling me, because I was in corporate finance, they'd be like, no, it's all good. Our clients are telling us it's all good. Their clients who they're taking to the golf course and, drinking all day long,
the golf
and to dinners and all this. And it looks all good because they throw that plastic down until that time when it doesn't get approved, and that's ultimately what happened in my companies. The builders were the last to recognize them. But it's what you say and exactly what I said, which is, you just drive around people, just drive around. That's all you have to do. It is so obvious. And I think that's what's happening. But I'd love to, you said a couple of things. I love to that you talk about how, kind of the national aggregate data is just total BS, even for reported MLSs in your area, because I can, something I wrote about a couple of weeks ago is I could not believe the July National Association of Realtors results. They were just a cut and paste from last year. You could see it. They also, in my opinion, I can't prove it, but I mean, statistically, they used the month over month increase that we saw in median listing price to actually calculate the July median listing price. So I mean, median sale price. So there are just all kinds of tricks that are happening.
Yeah.
And I don't, you may or may not know, but NAR had to restate all home prices from 2008 to 2011. Like, and so because they got caught by CoreLogic. So anyway, every realtor has told me the data's BS. It's all BS. But tell us a little bit, because I think this is important. I can see that the consumer's under stress. I can see it in servicing. I can see it, of course, when the Fed comes out in February and says, oh, yeah, refis were rejected at 41.8%. I mean, that's insanity, the highest they'd ever seen. That's corrected a little bit because I think a lot of people were just like, well, no, I can't qualify. They know they can't qualify, so they're not applying. But just tell us what you're seeing on the consumer, and then we'll get to some of that creative financing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not rocket science here. The last thing that people stop paying for is their house, right? So the first things they would stop paying is their credit card, right? And obviously we're seeing record high credit card delinquencies. The next thing that they would stop paying is their car, right? And so now we're seeing record number of card delinquencies, 60-day plus delinquent. We have charts and data to back all of this up. And then the last thing that they end up, having these issues with are paying their mortgage. And so we're seeing the consumer extremely stressed, especially for an area like Jacksonville, where it's completely reliant on migration, and migration has fallen about 80% from the peak. And we're actually seeing people relocate back out because of return to office, and we're seeing layoffs as well. So people who buy in these new construction communities and like Nocatee, beautiful communities, by the way, like the builders are doing a pretty good job, although there are like a ton of lawsuits that'll probably come because they slap them up so fast. There's always issues.
Right.
But I mean, they don't have the incomes to be able to support those type of payments that these buyers need to pay. So again, they're going after the incentives on the rate buy downs to try to get people in because it's a payment economy. But we're seeing the consumers like extremely stressed out. We're seeing the debt to income ratios like off the chart. We're scraping to put deals together. People are borrowing from their parents. Seeing more FHA type of stuff come through is obviously a red flag. But the credit quality of the buyers, it's either they're very wealthy from the Northeast or from California type area, and they come and buy cash, so it doesn't matter, or they're just like a dual income family just trying to ends meet, or they're just staying renting, and in a lot of cases, actually, when we look at the opportunity cost, it's $500 to $700 a month cheaper to rent than it is to buy right now. And I think the issue with the media is their job. They are literally paid to write articles to continue to push selling loans, like lenders sell loans, like builders sell houses, and that's who's paying these media companies. Even look like Housing Wire or any of these other companies. I was even in Lab Coat Agents the other day, which is an agent that like they don't get it. They're still pushing that we're in a 25-year boom moving ahead, and I'm just like scratching my head. I'm like, do you like live in an alternate reality? Like
I
this
do.
couldn't be further from the truth. So I'm getting more vocal about it because I think it sucks to watch these FHA consumers continue to buy at the peak of the bubble and then get screwed over on the downturn, give it back. Then they have to wait 7 years to buy again, and they're back at the peak. And I feel bad for these people. We need to get the word out that things are changing. People need to be careful. You need to be working with a top realtor. 74% of agents didn't even sell a house last year. Do not work with these people. Work with the top of the top of the top who sell 30, 40, 50 homes a year. They're going to be able to negotiate for you, make sure you're in the right neighborhood long-term, you're set up for success. Unfortunately, there's like less than 100 of them in my city that has 12,000 realtors. So it's crazy the number of people who are really, really good at what they do. It's very few. And that's no different than if you're hiring an attorney or a CPA, right? There's a handful that are just absolutely brilliant. And it's like that with every industry. But, be on the lookout, interview your realtor to make sure they're a top one, because you get stuck with one of the ones who doesn't even know what's going on, which is the majority of them, then you could really be setting yourself and your family up for massive failure.
Yeah, I consider this recent FHA lending predatory, and I don't even have the word. It's just so disheartening that essentially what the government did was take the place of private money and do subprime lending under the title government, and they helped. You could find a down payment assistance program. So
we have that now. Oh no.
And everybody, this is the thing, that if you're an actual person who understands credit and risk, like an actual someone who was around when people looked at these types of things, then you know that if they're taking down payment assistance and putting 3.5% down and have, a 600 credit score or whatever it is, they can't afford that home. And if there's any, and this is what really makes me mad, to use the Fannie Mae affordability calculator they have on their website, and they accept higher DTIs. Like any literature that you see coming from the FDIC or even on Fannie or Freddie's site, as they say, you really don't want to have more than 25 to 30% of your expenses for housing. But they don't, like right now on the Fannie Mae book, DTI or debt to income is at 38%, which is what it was in 2008. On the FHA book, it's over 60%. Like what? So they know what they're doing. They absolutely know what they're doing. And what happens, and just like you say, John, and you just feel it's like a whole swath of our population just gets kicked out of out of being able to do these transactions in home ownership, because by the time their credit repaired, by the time, typically home prices will have appreciated again. I'm of the opinion right now that with our demographics, we're not going to see the same kind of appreciation in the future once we get over this near-term correction, because I think that by that point, people who are talking about inventory shortage, unless there was some sort of bomb that took out most of inventory, are going to look like real idiots. I don't want that for them. Some of these analysts, John, like more well-known, I have sent so much, embarrassingly trying to just show them an alternative, and they just refuse to see it. And so it's nuts. I hope they come around. My favorite are the ones that are like, home prices will never go down. Oh, by the way, home prices are going down, but it's just good for now. And it's just like, guys, we've had no transactions for 2 years, like no transactions. Like, of course, home prices didn't go down. But John, I got to tell you what happened on Friday with a 10-year. I'm excited because I think that we could get, if we can keep going, get as low as we got last year. I think the lowest mortgage rate I remember was 6.08%. For the 30-year. And so if we can get there again, we're going to get more inventory. And I think with more inventory, we're going to get actual price discovery. And so it's something I'm looking forward to. But why don't we talk about, unless you want to say something to that.
I do, because I think the
go ahead.
demographic situation is probably one of the, other than interest rates, is one of the most important factors. We look at like the median age of the first-time home buyer being 38 years old. The median home buyer overall is like 56 years old.
Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Yeah, 56. That's crazy.
I'm concerned about my generation. I'm 34. I'm concerned about the younger generations being able to afford, and they're getting priced out. And it's really important to own real estate because it acts as a natural piggy bank, that continues to pay down every single month. And not having access to that and putting the money into rent, sure, it could save a little bit in the meantime, but I want prices to correct so the next generation has the opportunity. Now, who does that take the wealth away from? The boomers, but who's in charge of Congress, right? Who's in charge of the Fed? Like, they're going to bail themselves out at the detriment to the younger generations. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, but I know, Besant was saying the other week, we're going to have some sort of housing emergency. Like, they recognize it, right? I think I saw the FHA loan delinquency rate went like to 15.3%. Correct me if I'm wrong. And they maybe stopped reporting the data in February of this year. And we haven't heard anything. I guess they're just looking at the portfolio and saying, oh no. And we're going to find out about that next year. Cause I know the FHA workouts end, September 30th. But I think this all goes into play with the demographics are ugly. We're having I think I don't know, the numbers keep changing, but like 15 million boomers passing away, sadly, over the next, decade or so, something
yes,
like
10
that.
years. It's per Harvard. And it's 15.6 million. And from 2035 to 2050, it's another 25 million.
Wow.
And so right now, so for June, in terms of that overall FHA delinquency rate, let's see, where's the...
Are they releasing that data now?
They started doing it again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so
I wonder if
We
it's
didn't get it
or
for
not.
4. We didn't get it for 4 or 5 months.
Yeah.
But we got it now, and it looks like, let's see, for June we're looking at about a 6. We're still around the 12.5, 13%. But that, I mean, John,
Really
that is,
high.
I mean, this is what has just driven me back. You know what? Crazy. It's like if anybody had come to me when I worked at corporate finance and said any one of our books was this delinquent, I mean, every fire alarm bell. But that's why they came out with that, what you referenced, that advanced loan modification partial claim supplement, which they're putting guardrails on at the end of September. As of October 1, you have to do a trial payment. You cannot get it if you have delinquent student loans. You also can only get one every 24 months. So what had been happening is they just kept going back and back and back and back. It's insane. But let me tell you that I think there's a lot of kayfabe going on right now. You know, kind of kayfabe is the concept in wrestling where everybody goes and they know it's fake, but they participate anyway, right?
Right.
And I studied Russian and Russian literature in undergrad long time ago. You weren't even being thought of. And so I know a lot about Russia. I know a lot about Soviet history. I know a lot about Soviet literature. And I can tell you, I feel like I'm living in a Soviet novel right now. Like, it is just so bizarre. Just with they're telling us things that we just know, like you say, are not true. Yet everybody's like, oh, they're true. No, they're not. They're not true. But interestingly, on Friday, Besant came out with an op-ed, and it was very quietly delivered. Usually anytime he opens his mouth, breaking news all across social media. But it was a very interesting critique of the Fed and how they have contributed to asset inflation and priced out those younger borrowers. As you say, that he also talked about his national emergency. At the same time, over the weekend, this reporter, I don't know how you say her first or last name, it's Finley or something like that, at the Wall Street Journal, put out a piece. She's the one who did the FHA expose in the spring. So well-timed, well-placed. And then, she did the expose, then Scott Turner was able to come out and basically shut down that program. So she does a whole article talking about increased DTIs, all of this, the whole workout. I don't think they're going to bail out those asset holders like everybody thinks. Will there be intervention? Will there be? But I have a good friend who studies the FHA portfolios as well, John Comiskey, and he and I have talked about, as well as I love Russell Napier, who's a macro guy who really has gotten everything right. And it says you got to look at what they have to do, not what they say they're going to do. Right. And they've got to get the money from the people that have it. Let me tell you who doesn't have it. It's like, because they're also cutting SNAP benefits. That was passed through the BBB. So I don't think they're going to bail it out the way that folks are expecting. Now we shall see. I have some very alternative theories about what would happen, because they're not gonna make, their friends aren't gonna end up in the poorhouse, put it that way.
Right. They're gonna sell them off to like BlackRock or something like that.
Well, BlackRock was my former company's asset manager. I believe what they will probably do this time around is actually create some sort of facility or program to buy up these assets at some reduced, so opposite of what actually happened the last time around. Now, they might use BlackRock to negotiate the sale, because that's more of what they do anyway. They're more of like the distressed asset manager. But I think you're actually going to see a facility that buys up these homes from private equity at some sort of discount as exit liquidity. And so I could be totally wrong, but I honestly, if you kind of just think of this as a story, that's the logical ending, right? The way that we got out of the last crisis was Wall Street came in and bought them all up. They can't afford to hold them anymore. They don't have homestead exemptions. The insurance has gone through the roof all over the country, not just Florida and California. I mean, it's Arkansas, Iowa, all Colorado, everywhere. And so property tax, insurance, replacement costs, and now with all this overbuilding, everybody's having to compete for either, it doesn't matter. It's either the rent, either that person's going to rent or buy. And
Yeah.
now the entire housing market is competing for those people. And and something fascinating that you said that I want to dig into. So I love macro, but I also know you have to look micro or you will not understand what's happening. This is something I learned a long time ago in my career. And we've seen the aggregate population numbers and things like that. But when you start, now that we have some additional data about the makeup of that population increase, what you start to realize that even in places like Nashville, although the narrative was it's the rich Californians, that was the narrative around here in Johnson City, Tennessee as well. Um, in fact, most of that population increase were foreign born.
Right.
And they were coming for that to build. And this is what I saw all over the country, every job site. And I've been to probably now over 10,000 job sites at least. I mean, we have so many. Yeah, that's who was building. And so I think that we're all going to be waking up and being like, what in the world? All of these myths and narratives we all believed are just absolutely false. But that's why I think you're getting to that point now of creative. We are at the point, like the last 2 years has been the government trying to get everybody and their brother, just like, they just want homes. Like, you remember that scene in The Big Short where he's like, they just want a home, no, it doesn't matter. They can't afford it. They'll figure it out somehow. That's what the government was doing. They just took the place of those greasy loan officers that you see in The Big Short or brokers. And then, they kind of, that was the place that they took, and they've been trying to get everybody in the door. On the other side, you had private credit funding all of these, what I would call non-traditional lending outfits, not even non-banks. These are like, private companies that would go and get big amounts of money to do things like, oh, you need a little money to spruce up your home and list it, like Notable. We'll give you some money, and a lot of these guys, what did they use? They used the credit score. Well, guess what we've learned? That credit score was inflated because of student loans not reporting, delinquent, eviction moratoriums, mortgage moratoriums. And now they're all waking up and going, holy crap. We just lent a whole bunch of money to people who they're never going to pay it back. And so there's just we're in that stage of the cycle where it's like get the last people in the door. And it's going to end badly. But I think part of that, getting those last people in the door, you can speak to and talking about the creative financing component. So why don't you tell me a little bit about what you've been seeing over the last 6 to 8 months and how it's changed?
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. So my company, my wife and I own a brokerage called Momentum Realty here in Jacksonville. We're the number 2 brokerage office. In just 5 years, we got to that level, and we're going for number 1. But we have about 500 active listings right now. Wow. And I can tell you, we get offers on all of them, and they come from a creative financing source. It's almost as if like Pace Morby has a conference, and then every investor in the city and around the country just goes out and starts sub-2 offers. So sub-2 is a massive nightmare type of situation. I understand why sellers would be attracted to it, because their other options, if they're underwater, would be to do a short sale or just go through the foreclosure process, both of which are very painful. And they're praying that the sub-2 will work out, and then the market will somehow get better, and the sub-2 people will continue making the payments on their behalf. Now, there's obviously huge issues. They have all of the liability of holding the note, which, if the sub-2 buyer doesn't make the payment, then their credit score is going down. And if they try to get their property back, they have to go through the court system to legally get it back. And I mean, in Florida, it's a judicial state. It can take over a year. And so,
or more.
Yeah. And why would a sub-2 person, this is the question, is I don't understand it, because they don't cash flow. They usually lose $500 or $600 a month if you just do a regular sub-2, just like at the owners. That's why the owner is not renting it out, right? Because it doesn't cash flow. So the sub-2 person, usually they need to be fixed up a little bit. Sometimes they're new construction and they were in phase 1 and there's phase 2, 3, 4 coming behind it, and they just can't get out of it. And we're seeing right now is crazy phenomenon of sub-2 plus pad split. If you don't know what pad split is, look it up. It's basically taking a normal house, like a 4-bedroom house, and chopping each bedroom or adding bedrooms to have like 8 bedrooms, and then doing by the week rentals. And what's unfortunately happening is like these people go to the Pace Morby event, they come back and they make offers on properties that are in HOA communities that have restrictions on this. And they go in and then they chop up the bedrooms. And then we're just thinking like 3 to 4 years down the line, if we're underwater, which I expect these people will be further underwater, my projections on my investment models is that prices from October 2022 will be down 31 to 42%, depending on the area here in Jacksonville, Florida. That's based on my financial background in my modeling. But, I could see, if prices come down another 20%, why would a sub 2 person hold and operate that if they're losing cash flow? It doesn't make sense.
Wow.
And so they'd let the home go, right? They have skin, they have zero skin in the game. Most of the time they're putting $0 down or like $10,000
Right.
to pay them to get out. And these people are going to come back with a bunch of like 8 people in their house. And the neighbors are all upset, right? Because they have like all these cars parked out there, or a lot of them don't even have cars. It's public transportation. These people who work by the week. And it's just, how are you going to evict all these people, get your property back and turn it around? You're not. You're just going to hand the keys right over to the bank, and the bank's going to have to figure out how to unwind, 8 people living in a house that aren't making their payments. Or if they are making their payments, it's just, how does a bank take over a pad split? It's not even conforming. They can't even resell it with a normal, because it won't go through the appraisal process.
Of course not. And these guys just don't know, John. And so I'm going to step back and just explain some too, because 2 years ago, I went to my first private note conference because I started seeing some of these contracts, and people were talking about sub 2. And I was like, what are you talking about? Because, having managed default, I know that the way that you prove legal standing is by possession of that original note and that deed. I don't even care if you're in a deed state. I don't care. People will say that's like, no, procedurally, let me tell you how it's going to happen. And so, but this is the thing, once I left kind of my former company, my big company, to go help non-banks, they all thought they could read something and understand what was going to happen. Like, oh no, well, the law says, that's what the law says. It's like, no. You need to have actual experience. Like Florida, yes, they got faster at the end of the crisis, but many times my loans were aging 7 years by the time that I started managing defaults. Okay. And that's how, and so they have no evictions. Let me tell you how hard it is to evict people, even in places like Florida. Like it doesn't have to be somewhere like California or New York. It is like, we have a labor shortage. You think that's just going to happen lickety split? No. And so, okay, so sub 2, what is it? Basically what happens, and guys, they'll go look on public record, and they'll see that a notice of default has been filed, or maybe they're using some other program that they know that you're in trouble. They're going to approach you. Were you the one that said this to me? I can't remember. You said it's probably going to be an attractive couple that comes and says, hey, they look all nice and they're like, listen, we know that you're having some trouble. How about this? We'll pay your loan for you. Like we'll start making the payments. You don't have to. And this can work out in a couple of ways. They can say, you can stay in the house, maybe do some sort of short-term rental agreement. Or they'll say, we're looking for an investor to kind of come buy this out from under us. And then, we'll give you some sort of equity or cash when that happens. Or some of them will say, we'll give you cash for keys if you go ahead and leave now. The problem is, and so initially at the beginning of sub 2, a lot of people were recording the deeds, but then people got nervous about, there's a clause called due on sale. Yep. That essentially the lender can call that full note due and owing, and you do not want to accelerate that thing. Let me just tell you, because things go haywire from there. And then, so you're on the hook for the entire thing. So a lot of these sub 2 guys started like not recording the deed. And so what you're saying, so this has been going on for some time. Pace Morby has, on his Facebook, last time I checked, something like 10,000, 12,000 followers. I don't even know, but he is a massive influencer. And so I have been going, I went my first year to this private note conference, got introduced to everybody in Nashville. Last year I spoke at the conference. This is a big network. And these were the guys that want to do everything right. They don't even do sub 2. But I was hearing from servicers, John, that do sub 2. in hearing about FHA, they're now scraping the portfolio
Oh
and
no.
they're calling them in. They weren't doing it before, but they are now. What they'll do is, so the difference, and gosh, this is gonna, we're probably wigging out like nerd style that nobody's gonna understand what we're saying, but the kind of the difference, like with FHA versus Fannie and Freddie, is FHA, you're going to record those partial claims. And part of FHA's program, and the partial claim, again, for those that don't know, is part of the workout that they'll take, let's say you didn't make payments for 3 months, they put it at the back of the loan to be satisfied at payoff or when you sell it. Well, they record those. Okay. And so FHA does kind of a yearly assignment verification report, or they're just going to do a quick Benny check, is what we call it, or a quick title. And they're going to say, wait, what is this recorded on my loan? and they have started to call them. And so then folks stopped recording the deeds. So you may have no idea this is even happening. And I'm now hearing more and more, as I told everyone at that conference 2 years ago, you're going to start hearing from people who just get abandoned because the investor walks away, they stop paying the payment, and who's on the hook? The deed does not matter, guys. It does not matter. It's who's on that original note. And so anyway, it's about to get ugly. That's a sub two. Now, let's move on and talk more about these pad splits, because when you told me about this, I mean, I feel like I have some vague memory of someone talking about this, but I had no idea the extent of which this was happening. And so tell me more about it, because it makes no sense to me. Like, how do they even, like, what, like, just tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, so Pad Split's a technology company, and the tenants get to be members of Pad Split, and that's how they get around like the leasing issues and things like that. So it's a membership; they have access to all the properties, and they get to go into they're just getting around the law. And so, I've been pitched Pad Split by like 10 to 15 different people. You need to buy one, your cash flow is going to go up, this and that. And, they're trying to get creative to try to find any way to make money off of this real estate. And I can appreciate getting creative, but at a certain point, if you have to be that creative, it's just a bad deal and you shouldn't be doing it. And I think that's what's going to happen. I think a lot of these, if they're bought wrong, so there are Pad Split people who do make money. There are people outside of Atlanta. They don't have an HOA, and it is like a valuable thing to have affordable housing. And we badly need affordable housing. I think that's what's causing the majority of this issue. It's just the way they're structuring it, and the way that you have first-time investors, just like the Airbnb nonsense, where you have like, oh, I want to do it for the Instagram. People want to buy the Pad Split to be like, oh, I have a bunch of Pad Splits. I've yet to get a full P&L from somebody who manages a Pad Split who makes a tremendous amount of money. Now, you have to understand, you have to manage 8 people in these Pad Split. And, Pad Split does a lot of the work. So I will say that, but it is a mess. There's turns. There could be lawsuits. There's lots of liability associated with it. It's like, do you really want to run basically a mini hotel for like $500 a month when you could literally do anything else and make more money? And there's risks associated with this. It doesn't make sense to me, because it's like, how much capital do you need to put in, and how much time do you need to put in to get how much in return? And the numbers to me make no sense. I do think that there's going to be a ton of investors who walk away from their investments if they did it through sub 2,
especially in Florida.
The original owner. Oh, there's so much speculation in Florida. It's disgusting. It's more than 30% of homes are bought by investors and trying to flip their way through it. And I get it. I was one of them, by the way. I got wealthy by buying more than 200 units and flipping houses and all this kind of stuff. But, once I saw
when they cash flowed.
Oh, man. Oh, yeah. I mean, at the beginning, when you buy a house in 2014 and you hold it until 2022, it's cash flowing great. But I got to tell you, the repair costs are extreme. I mean, if you have to replace a roof, or you have to replace an HVAC, or the appliances go out, I mean, those $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 hits take away your whole cash flow for the entire time period. So I don't know many people who really cash flow on real estate. The game is, how do I buy it and hold on to it for 30 years? And I'm appreciating at the end and getting out, or owning it cash. But it's a long game, and I don't think right now I don't want to get in the game. I won't even buy real estate. I lend against it, but you have to put a lot down. we have a lending portfolio, but we have to, it has to be just like a slam dunk deal. I haven't originated one for 4 months, because it's not, and we were on our way to a $10 million portfolio very quickly. And when the market changed the agents just can't find deals that have enough meat on the bone, which brings me to the other point of this sub two with the agents. It sucks because they receive offers, they have to present all offers, and they have to give these to the seller in a way that they understand. So at our company, and we think there's going to be a ton of lawsuits against real estate brokerages who recommend or allow these transactions to happen without a disclosure. We had to create a separate disclosure for the seller to say, we don't recommend you do this transaction. Here's all of the things that could go wrong, that we expect could go wrong. You will not sue us. You will not sue any of our affiliates. You will not sue us personally. You will not sue the agent. We make them sign it at the time of contract signing, and we make the agents read it aloud and record it to the seller. And then they have to sign it again at the closing table for them to be able to process this through our, I mean, that is how serious we are taking these sub twos, because again, every single house has multiple offers, but what you don't know is that there are multiple sub two offers from like 3 or 4 companies that literally just blast the entire MLS with these offers. And this, most agents don't even know what it is, and they're just excited to get the commission. They'll push it through. So we think a lot of listing brokerages who facilitate these will be in lawsuits for the next couple of years, because I can imagine it just takes one person to go to this house, and then Farrah and Farrah, Morgan and Morgan, or whatever, you know, they're like, oh, these people like took advantage of me. It wasn't explained to me the risk.
Oh yeah, Morgan and Morgan.
To your liability policy. And that's the first thing they're going to ask for. And you facilitated it, and you're responsible for this happening. How could you do this? And I just think it's like, you're trying to extend the inevitable. And I don't think it's going to work. I think the government may be able to, if they step in and start buying like mortgage-backed securities, and they keep trying to push things along, because at the end of the day, the majority of the boomer wealth is like tied up in their real estate when you look at it. And so if the government lets that collapse, it's going to be a big issue for the retiring generations. It'd be good for the younger generation, but it's basically, you have to pick a side on which generation you're going to boost, because one of them is going to get screwed over the next 10 years. I don't know who it's going to be. It's going to probably depend on how much government intervention there is. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Melody, but I do think it's brutal out there. Like you said, the student loans for young people, the credit card debt, the affordability of things.
Buy now, pay later. Yeah.
My friends, they don't have 2 nickels to rub together.
That's
I mean,
right.
they don't have anything. They're doubling up with mom. They're getting apartments where there's 3. It's like, that's how I lived when I graduated from Virginia Tech and lived in DC. I lived in, my mom's basement. My wife lived in a room with like literally a sunroom of an apartment complex. And that's how it is now. But I'm in Jacksonville. Like, how does that happen in Jacksonville? This used to be a very affordable spot. And so that's my concern.
So sad.
The affordability is completely gone, and the wages aren't there for the younger generations to get out of their kind of debt situation and lack of income potential.
Yeah. So here's what I would say is that we have had unbelievable government intervention already. I mean, it is unprecedented. It is insanity. It's also causing issues for people who stayed out of the market and were frugal, and now realize that, wait, you mean I could have bought a house, not paid for 18 months, maybe use that money to buy a rental and do blah, 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 blah. And so it's causing all kinds of optic problems as well. And the other thing is, those boomers are going to need these younger generations to take care of them. And they're going to need housing. And also, if you, personally, I want the person who's taking care of me in my old age to be happy. Because if they're not, that could be a problem. Places like Florida, you have an issue with infrastructure, as well as the healthcare system is not great at all. And so, I think there's going to be some natural consequences that occur that the government may try. The things that they talked about for this national emergency aren't going to do anything. Like anything. I don't care if builder costs go down. We already have so much inventory, and even in the Northeast, it's misallocated. It's mispriced. You probably don't even know it exists, because it's going through probate right now, because what you're seeing is a lot of properties going to the heirs, and they're inheriting it. They can't afford it, or it has some kind of problem. They're trying to sell it. So for those in the Northeast that say, oh, we have no inventory, you do. You're just not even aware of it. Use something like Property Radar. Do a little Google of a city, you'll see tax liens, owner liens,
Yeah.
pre-foreclosures, divorce, death. And you'll realize very suddenly in this town that you thought there was no inventory, there is a lot of inventory that's going to be there in the next 6 months. And really, as we cycle through, uh, unfortunately, the next year of demographic decline. And so, the inventory issue, I think, is going to tip the scales on top, due to the demographics. And just as we saw, so when did the Fed start buying MBS? They made the decision in 2008, it was 2009. And it did not save the housing market. What it did, I remember it gave me a year of not having to do strategic alternative analysis or think about filing bankruptcy because we got just enough juice from those refinances to putter along. But then at the same time, you had rising delinquencies.
Right.
And these non-banks don't have deposits. And so I actually was uniquely positioned to understand what's next. They're using, borrowings from the banks. And quickly, as you're not able to originate enough to cover your expenses and you're filing claims with the government for, say, FHA, and those claims are getting delayed because there's just not enough people, and also there's no technology. And the same starts happening even with Fannie and Freddie. Or Fannie and Freddie, what they typically do is they review every single loan in default and make you repurchase it, which that's another liquidity suck. Or they do these things called compensatory fees. I've heard, I'm hearing right now they're not doing them at scale, but let me tell you, the minute they start getting low on funds, they'll start doing them again. And compensatory fees are for a timeline delay when you're managing the default. And so I think things are going to be tried. I think that it might slow things down a little bit. But once we get to the point where everybody can look around and say, we don't have an inventory shortage, I think natural kind of effects will take place. And we might have some pausing of where you might see minor appreciation or something like that. But I think we're going to correct it all the way. And I think it's going to look very much how home prices looked before, 1950, really 1970. It's just flatline.
Yeah.
Which tracked with median income. Like Ford, for instance, very famously wanted his employees to be able to afford his cars selfishly because it was just more people he could sell them to. And so an employee of Ford back, 100 years ago could buy 2.5 cars with their wages in 1 year. You can't even buy one now.
Correct.
And so things have changed drastically. And because of that hyper financialization of which you were part and parcel, and so was I. And so I think that I honestly don't believe that we are going to see a radical appreciation environment again for probably my lifetime. And so, but who can say, right? I mean, you can't really say. And of course, as you and I know, it matters. Local does matter. I mean, people always say real estate's local. Well, it is. But a lot of times these national themes, the impact will be of the same nature. It's just what is the scale? And in Florida, unfortunately, they just went bananas.
We're ground zero. I mean, the building, I'll send you the videos. I mean, it's insane how much new construction is here. And there's certain areas of town where you're just like, those are all going to go. And what's happening right now is they're being bought up by build to rent type of operators and like entire communities. And so then I'm like, but who's going to rent there? Because there's no jobs out there and there's not a lot of people there. So I'm very confused and then there's like so much supply coming on and there's competition from multi.
You know what it is, John. You actually know what's happening. They're buying them at a reduced rate, or they're doing it at an inflated price so that they can get refinancing. So it's like two scenarios right now. They're trading cards. They're just trying to keep it up. Yeah. And so you've got some coming in, buying whole Lennar at some reduced price they're not telling anybody about, right?
Usually at cost. Yeah. I mean, if it's like 500,000, they're buying it for 300,000. I mean, you can kind of do the math because it's all public stuff. Right. And I'm like, oh, there's like,
in your state it is
for 300.
Yeah. I love the sunshine law, right? In your state, you can figure anything out.
Right.
And I
Not
love it.
realistic. Yeah.
But Texas, it's a little harder. California, it's a little harder. So that's one thing they're doing. The other thing they're doing is they're selling to one another. It's like all in the family, and they're selling for a higher price so they can turn around and justify and say, no, look at my comps. I can totally get 750 for this $350,000 house, right? And then that's just extending and pretending and extending and pretending. So I don't think, I mean, honestly, they may say this to themselves and repeat whatever they need to in the morning, but they know. I mean, they know.
They
That,
have to
I
know
mean,
deep down.
they
Yeah.
know. I mean, they know because where are they coming from? I mean, if, honestly, with the current administration, we're not going to get immigration.
Right.
So where are these folks coming from? Because we had the lowest percentage of relocations last year
Yep.
since they started tracking it. So where are they coming from?
Well,
People can't even afford to move.
that's my
Yeah.
argument is like, who is the next buyer?
Right. Who?
And
The
do they have
robots?
money
I
to
mean,
buy?
who?
Right.
Yeah.
Like who? It's definitely not, my generation. Like, well, first
No.
off, all the wealthy people in my generation already bought. So the dual incomes already bought in like 2020, 2021, and they're locked into low rates. They're not going to be able to move. So it's like now that that's passed, who are the next gigantic wave of buyers to buy at today's prices? I just don't see where in like, then we have the people passing away and they have 3,000 square foot homes. They're completely outdated. Nobody can afford. I mean, the house that I live in,
roof. Yeah.
Yeah, my house, I had to put $150,000 in this house. I bought it. My mortgage payment was $3,200 a month. Now to buy the same house, you have to pay $12,000 a month. Like nobody even makes $12,000 a month in my entire city. Like there's a handful of people who make that amount just to pay it. So I'm like, who is buying this? It's only wealthy people from the north and the west that can come in and purchase, and the rest of them are just going to sit there, and they're going to have to reduce prices extremely significantly, and it's going to take years because they're so unrealistic about the price. The sellers are, and it's taking a very long time for them to really. You can flash the data in front of them and say, like, could you buy this house back at today's rate and pay $12,000 a month? And they just don't get. They don't care. They don't get it, and they just want what they want. And so they're actually sticking and staying where they are versus moving close to family. And that's part of the reason why we're seeing this lock-in effect, and we're seeing like number of sales just drop, because I think it's something like 70% of sellers are also buyers. And so we're not getting those double transactions as often because they can't get the equity out of the house that they currently have to go buy their next one. So they're stuck. And that's why I think we could have a suppressed number of sales for a very long time.
Yeah.
We could just be scraping along the bottom here, or, I think it is going to be interest rate dependent though. I mean, if rates do drop another 1.5%, it's going to help some, but I don't think it's going to be enough to bring down. I think prices will still have to come down.
Oh, 100%. Oh, definitely. I mean, definitely. And I'm going to refresh an analysis I did last year where I went, interest rate by interest rate, exactly where rates would have to be before you could trigger. Like I did it. It's still now, but no, the only reason I want lower interest rate is because what'll happen is you'll get more interest. And I think the more interest you get, then that seller will be like, okay. I mean, it's just like multiple times where they can be like, oh, maybe, or okay, I can deal with this kind of thing, just more of them, not a ton, but they're just kind of like, well, but then what no one's talking about is distress selling, and that is also going to increase. So I think if we can keep rates if we can get them down to around that 6%, I think we might end 2025 with slightly higher sales than 24. It's not looking possible, but I just we saw such a strong end of last year comparatively, because rates had come down. And so but to your point, we could just, unless something breaks, we could just drag along the bottom with the distress. And this is where I think those folks that talk about dual incomes, which we've had since the 70s, what they don't understand is like, what's going to drive the market, what had been driving the market because of all of your loss mitigation programs, because the FHA trying to lend to every Tom, Dick, and Harry, was people that were paying those higher prices. Either they were your rich Californian, like you say, or your desperate FHA who got a loan to support a $500,000 price for a home that was probably worth $275,000. So they've been holding that market up. That's why median prices haven't come down. Well, now what's happening with those programs expiring, then distress and those investors who are now under distress and are walking away and just disappearing into the night, distress is going to take over from here. And so transactions that you do have are going to be weighted heavier on the distress side. And so I think you could see a drag on home prices, and it could go much faster than our friends who talk about dual incomes possibly think. And so, it's going to be wild. And I think the biggest wild card, like you say, and I mean, I've been saying this as well, is government intervention. What are they going to try to do? But I know that what they've done I mean, you would probably cause civil unrest if you do more than what they've done. I mean, and I'm not kidding around, because the amount of anger I see, Jon, already around these is wild. And so I think that, you're pretty much talking about giving away free homes. And I mean, honest, and I think you're going to start to see the pitchforks come out. And so I just think there's a limit to how the government can intervene. And they've got to take the money where it is. And it's not with, like you say, the folks of your generation that can't rub two nickels together.
They're angry. I mean, and the boomers are angry too, because they list their house, they can't get the price. We call it rage canceling or rage quitting their listing. We're putting in our listing agreements, you need to pay $4,000 or $5,000 to cancel, because, or if it expires, because the agent still needs to get paid for the tons of hours they put in the marketing and everything they put into your house. But they get so mad. They put it on for 2 to 3 months. They get like no traction. Nobody wants their green carpet, whatever. And I'm serious. And they think they're going to get like full price 2022 price for it, 2021 price for it, and they can't get it. They get angry. And then the young people, like, I literally can't afford that. I mean, it's just like a conversation between like the young person, like, I want to buy your house, I can't afford it. And the old person saying like, you need to work harder, you need to make more money, you need to do this, you need to do that. And they're like, it's not the same as it used to be. Like, you can't just simply work harder and magically make 4 times more, to afford the house. It's just not a possibility for the majority of people.
I just feel like our mainstream media has done such a disservice to us, right? Because what on the one side, and we'll use these terms, and I want to say to the audience, boomers, millennials, whatever. Right. We know it's not all of them. We know that, and I don't have anything against. It's a shorthand that media has kind of given us. And I'll say on the opposite side, boomers are they're the largest contribution to the homeless population right now. My boomer mother lives with me because there are no other options. She worked her entire life as a nurse. But we got taken out with that first inflation wave back in the 70s and never could catch back up. And so it's not every boomer. It's not every millennial. But, there is so much, just confusion out there because mainstream media continues to talk about this inventory shortage narrative. They continue putting lies out there. And so people are just not aware. And so you kind of feel sorry for a group of people that just thought they were a whole lot wealthier than they actually are. And they were banking their retirement on it. And, but I love what you call it, like the rage canceling.
I can't tell it because they get so, I don't know, they get offended. They say it's your fault. It's you. It's not the house. It's not where it's located. It's not that there's 5 new constructions being, they get so angry at the human. And it's like, if you're angry, you should go to Congress and you should go to the Federal Reserve and start protesting the people who actually inflated all your dollars away and made it really hard for the next wave in the next generation to make money. It's they're pointing the finger at the agents, like, and they think somehow like agents like choose the price. Like, the agents have nothing to do with it. Supply, demand, and demand is down, supply is increasing, and you got stuck in the middle of it at a bad time, and you should have sold years earlier and planned ahead, and now you have to pay the price for it. And so they take it off the market. They stay in these gigantic houses, and they are going to wait for a better market that's probably not going to come. And we have to explain this to them. They don't care. They're just angry and they're just going to take it off the market. So, we see a lot of emotions going around. I think at some point it will register. Oh, wow, I should have listened to the agent and sold it, reduced it 10% and sold it, 2 years ago. I think that's going to be, hindsight's going to be 2020. I don't think prices can go up from here. I don't think there's a certain amount of federal intervention that will be able to get this to push forward because the consumer is maxed out. The next generation that's buying is maxed out. So I don't like if prices go up from here. I mean, it's gonna be the same affordability crisis that we've been in.
Oh, and I think it'll get worse. Like, I believe
Yes.
the pitchforks will come out, because what'll happen is people will look around and be like, but there's 10 vacant homes on my block. Like,
Yeah.
what do you mean I can't
Well,
afford a
wait.
place to live? Right. Like, so it's like you say, it's like that cognitive dissonance. And then you're like, but wait a minute, you're telling me that there's a shortage, but I'm looking at all these for sale signs. Like,
Yes.
how can that be possible? And people are slowly waking up. And I feel really sorry for the folks that, didn't understand what was really happening, because their lives are going to change. But we have run out, we will still, like, Tennessee is still going to get, we're a halfback state because the people in Florida will come halfway to the cheaper states. We'll still get some Californians, New Yorkers, people from Illinois, but
Right.
that big relocation has really already happened, and kind of you've kind of maxed out those high income earners. And what everybody did in the new builds is they built for luxury in multifamily, luxury apartments. And I was just like, where do you think all these rich people are coming from? Like, when you can go to freaking Aventura outside of Miami and it's just ghost condos everywhere, there's nobody lives there, so it's just wild. It's just wild that narrative could be this powerful. And we know that NAR is the largest lobbying firm in DC by spend, and so they have worked extra hard. It would be lovely if some of these people would have to be accountable. I don't think that'll likely happen. That's why knowledge is power, because guys, I think that the interesting thing about that generation, Jon, and I think really this is prevalent right now in all the generations, that the government's going to come bail you out in some form or another. The problem is that's just simply not true. And you can see that by going out to California after the fires. You can see that around here after Helene. They're not coming to help you. No one's going to solve this for you. And so you have to get out of that learned helplessness and take charge of the situation. And that has been my mission for the last, few years, is just telling people, like, you don't have to believe everything I'm saying, but just go out and look for yourself. That's all I'm asking you to do. Otherwise, you are going to get screwed. And unfortunately, I think a lot of people are going to, they're going to wake up and realize they are in a very different situation than they thought they were. So, well, anyway, I'm so excited you came in to talk to us. I definitely want you to end with where people can find you, because, I'm excited for your YouTube channel. I have a feeling you're going to do really well. But any last words, parting thoughts? For me, I love your passion around the younger generations. That's why I do this. I want them to be able to afford housing. But any last words or anything you would like to share?
Yeah, and I want the older generations to win too. I just think
Sure.
that the government has just been manipulating this for too long, and at some point we need the system to reset. I mean, my best advice to you is, if you need to get with a top real estate agent in your area that's going to tell you the truth. There's probably in each market like 5 or 6 of them who have the background, who understand it, and they will be able to help you determine whether you should be buying now or renting now, or trying to figure out a game plan. Because if you do have to hold on to it for 10 to 15 years and it's a 15-year move, you might be okay. But if you are like PCSing in on, like, in the Navy, and you're coming into Jacksonville, you're here for 2 years and you're leaving, this is not the time to buy a house. Like, you're going to be underwater on that sucker, and it's going to be really hard to get out of. So get with a top agent. If you need help, you can always message me. I have connections across the country, been doing this for about a decade. But yeah, I mean, you can find me anywhere. The YouTube is called Think Big, Question Everything. I just started it about 90 days ago. I had no idea anybody wanted to look at real estate data. And I'm glad it led me to you, Melody, because I think people need to listen to you. I think you have a unique perspective that a lot of people don't have, and you're an alternate voice to the BS echo chamber that you hear from these larger institutions that constantly push housing down people's throat, when it's probably not the right time to go big into this. And that's, again, I put probably there because each area and each local area is completely different. I only specifically talk about Jacksonville, Florida, and Florida, because those are the areas that I know best. I don't talk about other areas around the country. I think the national data is good because it'll influence, the different dynamics of what could come to your area. But ultimately, like, it's local, it's hyper local. There are pockets of this country that will still do completely well, either because of some compensating factor like beaches or limited supply, or,
Right.
and there's many reasons of why an area could do well. But if you're buying out in the boonies right now in Florida, I think you're
Right.
going to get smacked around and lose a lot of your net worth and have a lot of stress, and it'd be way easier for you to rent and cheaper for you to rent
Right.
long term. So, that's my message, is please be careful. If you need help, reach out to Melody, reach out to me, keep watching. And I'll tell you this, when the market is right to invest, I'll let you know, because I'll be recording it and putting it all online. And I want everybody to win. It's not a generational thing. I think it's just, that's what's happening right now type of thing, is that the youngers are just priced out. Who's the next buyer?
Right.
It's either going to be someone who's coming from another country with money or relocating out of state, or it's someone local. The younger locals can't afford. So like who's the next buyer? So I don't think, I just want to be clear on that. I don't have any sort of disagreement.
Right.
We
Exactly.
learned the most from them. I actually wish they came out and spoke more and shared more of what the valuable
knowledge.
their
Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah.
But it is a contrast right now. And there's an upset demographic, and there's another upset demographic, and the Fed and the Congress are in the middle of it.
Yeah. And it doesn't help that we just keep yelling at each other. We're not going to do either group any good. We need to start talking to one another and coming up with solutions, because our Congress is
not pad split. Yeah. And not subject.
it is not pad split. And I know this is crazy that I don't know this, but are there things like where you can go look in your area and say, who are the top 5 real estate agents in your area? Does Better Business, does somebody do that?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's tons of I won't name them here because I hate all of them, because
Okay, then never mind.
it's usually a pay for play.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can even ask ChatGPT, but ChatGPT uses like Reddit as like one of their sources. So I don't know how accurate that is, but
It's not accurate at
you can
all.
reach out to me, and I
Yeah.
know who's legit, because I can literally name under, like, on my 10 fingers, the best agents in each city. We all go to the conferences together. We all know each other. We all know what's actually going on, and we don't get stuck with these crap agents. And unfortunately, the majority of agents are they shouldn't even be legally allowed to have a license, to be honest with you, in my opinion.
Awesome. Yeah. And sorry, say and I'll obviously put it in the show notes, but what's the name of the channel again?
Yeah, Think Big, Question Everything. It's at the real Jon Brooks. It's the only tag that was available. But look, we're just going to continue to put out information we think will be helpful to consumers if you're trying to make a decision on housing moving forward. And Melody, I listen to you. I think everybody, Melody, I mean, you need to listen to what she has and what she's going on. I mean, she puts a lot of work into this stuff. The data that I'm looking and reviewing from her is exactly what we are experiencing on the ground. I'll get an email from Melody. I'll be like, I just literally had that conversation with a consumer and agent the other day, and then it'll happen again. And I'm like, yes, like, she is on it, which is incredible, because you have this insight without being on the ground with the agents. Like, right, we know how many people are coming through the open houses. What's the loans like? Do they have good credit score? Do they have any money? All that stuff. You have access to be able to see that without being on the ground, which is impressive. I guess that's probably because you're driving the cities and you're talking with
driving, people. But tracking a massive amount of data, John.
Yes.
And because you have to triangulate, there's no one good data source, and you have to put the story together. And I think, I'm a storyteller above all things, and I'm a researcher. I research it all, and then I tell the story. And that's different from somebody throwing a graph at you. And because it doesn't resonate the same way. But I appreciate all the really nice things that you've said. As I was kind of telling you, I hope, and if people have watched me for some time, they're not going to believe me, but I really do hope that I'll be able to do more of these types of YouTubes where I can really get knowledge experts out there, what they're seeing, boots on the ground, because that is the true story. It's not what we're reading in the newspaper or what the Chamber of Commerce wants everybody to believe, or what, they want.
The job is to track business and think everything is good. So you have to understand the incentives behind every person who's putting out the content, and it's usually money related, and people will sell their soul for $5 every day of the week. So, I don't believe any of the people. I won't drop names, but maybe I will in the future. But there's people that they're delusional at this point, because they have to keep pushing the housing narrative to be able to continue their business operations. And I think that's a huge detriment to society getting away from reality. So don't buy it. Listen to people like Melody.
Well, thank you. Thank you, Jon. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. Have
All
a
right.
great day, everybody.